Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to give my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off tonight, we had the Hurt Syndicate. Hurt Syndicate come out to the ring. MVP grabs a microphone. He hypes up the Hurt Syndicate. MVP then mocks Swerve. A video package was played showing Lashley versus Swerve at Full Gear. MVP says that Lashley is the most dangerous man in AEW. Another jab towards Swerve. And MVP says that their mission statement here is that they're here for AEW Gold. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of the night. It's a Continental Classic tournament matchup. It is Mark Briscoe taking on Shelton Benjamin. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Briscoe and Benjamin, with Briscoe keeping the pace of the match. Briscoe then hits a senton through the ropes, taking out Benjamin. Briscoe then hits a froggy bow at the top rope. Briscoe then hits an elbow drop off the apron, paying homage to Cactus Jack. But Shelton gets up, hits the finish on Briscoe, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and the winner of the 3 points due to a pinfall, is Shelton Benjamin. Benjamin's going to move on in the tournament. Moving on from that, we have a Mercedes Moné segment. Moné was interviewed. Tony says that Moné versus Statlander could be match of the year. Camille then tells Moné to shut up. And Camille says that Moné can't fire her and that she quits. Looks like Camille is finally doing her own thing, getting away from Moné. Moving on from that, we have a Ring of Honor title matchup. It is Jericho defending the Ring of Honor title against Ishii. I thought it was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between Jericho and Ishii, with Jericho and Ishii exchanging in the ring. Jericho hits a DDT off the apron on Ishii. Jericho and Ishii both exchange chops across the face. Jericho then hits a Death Valley driver in the middle of the ring. Jericho hits a lion salt as well. Jericho hits a Judas effect on Ishii. Jericho hits a code breaker for a near fall. Ishii gets up, finally gets involved in the matchup, hits a code breaker of his own on Jericho. Ishii then hits a step up enziguri on Jericho, but Jericho hits 2 Judas effects on Ishii, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and still Ring of Honor World Champion, is Jericho. Hats off to Chris Jericho for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we have Swerve Strickland being interviewed by Renee Paquette. Swerve says that he will rebound after the match he had against Lashley at Full Gear. After that, we see Max Caster walking by. Max Caster then mocks Swerve, and then Swerve attacks Max Caster. Moving on from that, we have an added Paige segment. Paige comes out to the ring, being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. Paige mocks Christopher Daniels. Paige then talks about a deal that he had with Christian Cage. Paige says he wants the AEW title back. After that, Jay White shows up, standing on the stage with a microphone. Jay talks about Full Gear. Jay says that he wants the AEW title as well. After that, Pat comes out to the ring to attack Jay. Yuta attacks Paige. Paige then attacks Jay. Marina Shafir then attacks Paige. Jay then goes for a Blade Runner on Marina Shafir, but Moxley chokes out Jay White. Moving on from that, we go to our next match of the night. It's another Continental Classic tournament matchup. It is Ricochet taking on Claudio Castagnoli. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Ricochet and Castagnoli, with Castagnoli keeping the pace of the match. Ricochet hits a Hurricane Rana as well as a springboard moonsault, taking out Claudio Castagnoli. Claudio then applies a sharpshooter, but the hold is broken, and then Claudio hits a devastating lariat on Ricochet, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and the winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic tournament is Claudio Castagnoli. Moving on from that, we have Kyle Fletcher. Fletcher is being interviewed backstage by Renee with Don Callis. Don talks about Ospreay at Full Gear, says that they destroyed Will Ospreay. Fletcher says that he is better than Ospreay, and he looks forward to the Continental Classic tournament. Moving on from that, we have an Adam Cole segment. Cole comes out to the ring with Undisputed Kingdom. Cole then mocks MJF. O'Reilly is here. O'Reilly said he wants to fight MJF. Cole tells him to stop. MJF then is shown on the Titantron. After that, MJF, with him being shown on the Titantron, MJF says that he is not focusing on O'Reilly and Cole. MJF then says that he's focused on the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal. And O'Reilly and Cole then both said that they will enter the Battle Royal to get their hands on MJF. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's Queen Aminata taking on Jamie Hayter. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Aminata and Hayter, with Hayter keeping the pace of the match. Hayter and Aminata exchange in the middle of the ring, with Hayter hitting the finish on Queen Aminata, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Jamie Hayter. After the match, the lights go out. A spotlight was shown at the stage, and it looks like Julia Hart is still playing mind games with Jamie Hayter. Moving on from that, we go into the main event of AEW's Dynamite. It's another Continental Classic tournament matchup. It is Darby Allin taking on Brody King. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Allin and King, with King keeping the pace of the match. It also looks like AEW lost some commentary feed during the match. I think it was like 90 seconds with no commentary. Darby then hits a coffin drop on the outside, taking out King. King gets up, hits the finish on Darby Allin, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match and winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic Tournament is Brody King. After the match, you can see Claudio walking up the stairs into the ring with holding a chair. And then King enters the ring to stare down Claudio Castagnoli. Definitely looking forward to that matchup in the Continental Classic Tournament. A couple of things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW. Number one, like I told you guys at Full Gear, man, Full Gear was one of AEW's, if most confusing pay-per-views. To me, was it one of the AEW's worst pay-per-views? No, I think some of the match quality-wise, the last 4 matches were really good. But I also think pay-per-view match, selection throughout the show is definitely something that AEW needs to go back to, because, man, the first couple hours of that show was just brutal to get through, to be honest with you. But the biggest thing I would take away from Dynamite, man, is the fallout from Full Gear. There really wasn't a lot of tie-up, in my opinion, after what happened in Full Gear. We really didn't see Moxley until one part of the night. There really was no rebuttal from Jon Moxley of what happened with him and Orange Cassidy. We have no word on Orange Cassidy from that match. It looks like he sustained some injuries after the match he had with Moxley at Full Gear. But there's really no fallout, man. I feel like AEW, and I'm going to say this until the end of time, that they have really hard times telling stories or captivating stories that actually get the fans invested. And I've been preaching that for the past few months, ever since AEW pretty much signed their new TV deal. And I mentioned this multiple times about AEW, specifically about Tony Khan, that I feel as if, as a fan, in my opinion, that once AEW and Tony Khan signed this new TV deal with Time Warner Media, I feel like Tony Khan kind of took his foot off the gas as far as creative storylines and captivating the fans and actually getting them invested, man. And I think it's ultimately hurting the show. A couple of things else I want to talk about AEW too that's come out recently. I know AEW has a big show that's taking place in 2025 in Australia. Now, the way that what I've heard is that the original arena that they booked this show in is no longer going to happen. They moved it to a smaller arena because they cannot sell out the stadium in Australia. I believe it's a Grand Slam show next year for 2025. That, unfortunately, the original arena, they are going to move that show into a smaller arena, so hopefully they can sell out fans, which, again, is another big, tall tale task for AEW, because a lot of fans are not really buying tickets to these shows. The other thing that I really wanted to talk about, too, well, 2 things. Number one, Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks was doing an interview, I think it was like a week ago or a couple days ago, and he also showed up at a GCW event. And, Ricky Starks was asked the question about, what's going on with him with AEW, why is he not being showcased on television. Ricky Starks really didn't give an answer. He didn't really say anything bad towards Tony Khan or AEW. He just, he just said he couldn't answer the question because he doesn't have an answer. Ever since that interview that Ricky Starks had, he was pulled from a GCW event. He was also pulled, I believe, from a House of Glory event. And he's no longer able to work on the indies, which is a huge deal because, the talent that work with AEW also have the availability to work for independent, companies that have independent dates so they can get work. So, there's a lot of mix-up going on right now between Tony Khan and Ricky Starks. And my issue with this is, and it's a big issue, at this point, obviously you can tell that Ricky Starks is not injured, number one. Number two, Tony Khan is not putting him in any kind of storylines or even putting him on TV. We have not seen Ricky Starks on AEW television, I believe, since March. And here we are damn near December. So, that's an issue in itself alone. But I'm going to go back to what I originally said, I believe it was last week, that, if you remember distinctly, when CM Punk was in AEW, I know this might be a hot take for a lot of people, but let me try to, really make you guys understand this. CM Punk had a lot of friends, had some friends in AEW. He, had a lot of praise for Ricky Starks. He had worked with Ricky Starks in AEW and had good matches with Ricky in AEW. Ever since Punk left, a lot of the people that, were associated themselves with CM Punk are not really being showcased on television or not being showcased as much as they were when Punk was in AEW. Whether that's Britt Baker, whether that's FTR, whether that's Ricky Starks, whether that's Wardlow, you're not really seeing... Wardlow obviously is injured, and I understand that. But you're not seeing Miro, you're not seeing Ricky. All these people had, friendships with CM Punk. And I think with Tony Khan, what's starting to really portray himself is Tony Khan is turning into Vince McMahon, minus the allegations. Where he's keeping talent, captive, which I will talk about in a minute when it pertains to the Rey Fenix situation, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But you look at someone like Ricky Starks, man. Obviously, Ricky is healthy. He's ready to go. He wants to be on TV. He wants to be a part of AEW. And Tony Khan wants no parts about it. He does not want to book him on television. And it's the same thing with Penta and Phoenix. Like I said, I will talk about here in a minute. I think this is absolutely ridiculous, to be honest with you, especially when it pertains to Penta and Phoenix as well as Ricky Starks. This situation is absolutely ridiculous. And it shows on the company. And it really shows a lot of ill will towards Tony Khan. Tony Khan, I don't know what the situation is with this guy. I really don't. Do I think sending someone like Ricky Starks or not using someone like Ricky Starks or Penta Phoenix is, detriment to the company? Yes, I do. I really do. And it also goes to show you that, AEW was supposed to be the alternative. And right now, they're not. Right now, and I've said this multiple times about AEW as of late, man, that watching AEW's product anymore is becoming a chore. It's not something that I'm almost even enjoying anymore because it's like Tony Khan and whatever creative team that he has over there, they don't give an absolute fuck what's going on. They just don't. I don't think they give a shit what the fans think. They made their money. They're made, $550 million for the next 4 or 5 years. They don't give a shit about the fans, man. And this is the other reason why I said that I believe that Tony Khan, took his foot off the gas pedal as far as creative decisions and making, captivating television. Because as of late, the weekly episodic television for AEW Dynamite and Collision has been in the goddamn toilet. And it's hard to watch, man. It's really hard to be like, oh, you know what? I really want to watch AEW Dynamite. No, it's really hard to watch the product right now because there's no sense of direction or where this company's going. You look at the situation with Jon Moxley. Well, yeah, we had the matchup with Orange Cassidy at Full Gear, and then the rebuttal was what on Dynamite? What was the fallout from that? What's next? Who's next? Nobody knows. The storyline with Jon Moxley has ran its course, and it's run flat to a point where no one gives a shit what Jon Moxley does anymore. And with all due respect to Moxley's a great competitor, man. He's great on the microphone. Every time he grabs a microphone, it's must listen every single time. But do I think Moxley's going to carry this company on his back? Absolutely not. I just don't. I think Tony Khan has a lot of praise for Mox, and I think Moxley is a great wrestler. He's a great competitor, and obviously Moxley sees a vision that I guess others on AEW's roster does not see that same vision that Moxley has for AEW. But, I also believe, in my honest opinion, that the vision that Moxley has for AEW is not going to fill the void of what AEW has been doing as of late, because right now that storyline has fallen flat. So how much trust are you going to be really putting into Jon Moxley to, have Jon Moxley carry this company into a whole different echelon of what it's been for the past couple months? I don't have a lot of faith in that. I just don't. I'm all for the younger talent getting, TV time and everything else like that, but you got to build captivating stories and long-term storylines to actually get us to these next PLEs or pay-per-views to actually get the fans invested. That's the reason why you can't sell out a stadium show in Australia. You know what I mean? You look at, and my thing is this. You also have All In 2025 at the Texas Ranger Stadium. Is that good? Do they really expect that to sell out? I doubt it, to be honest with you. And for Athena, I would be very pissed off if Athena wasn't a part of that show, because I believe she's from Texas, if I'm not mistaken, and she should be a part of that show. And Athena should be on Dynamite, period. I think Athena is wasting her career away on Ring of Honor, and I've said that from day one. There's no reason why that woman should be on Ring of Honor. She needs to be in AEW and be a vital point of that women's division on AEW. That's just that's my honest opinion. Camille, sure. You want to go to Ring of Honor? Absolutely. Swap her out with Athena? Sure. Athena should be on AEW television. Hands down. And my thing is with AEW, I don't know the direction they're going anymore. I really don't. And it's getting to a point now where it is really getting hard to watch the product, man, because, like I said, when it comes to weekly episodic television, Tony Khan and AEW, they don't give a shit, man. It's all about pay-per-views for them. And we all, pretty much gave the moniker to Tony Khan about him being Mr. Pay-Per-View. Okay, sure, but Full Gear flopped. You know what I mean? There was no captivating stories. There was no build-up towards Full Gear. It was, like I said, one of the most confusing pay-per-views in AEW's existence, in my honest opinion. The other thing I'll quickly want to talk about, too, is Rey Fenix, which I talked about earlier that I wanted to talk to you guys about, the Rey Fenix situation and my opinion on it. It's the same way I feel about Ricky Starks' situation. I think it's I can't even say it's Tony Khan being a class act, man. I think it's one of those shitty moves that Tony Khan's doing to Rey Fenix. Rey Fenix is going to be with AEW for quite a while, probably until next year. And he's going to be sitting Rey Fenix on the shelf. And the reason why Rey Fenix is still with AEW is because he tacked on time with him being out injured. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Penta's already gone from AEW, or he's going to be gone by the end of the week, and he's done with AEW. So who knows what's going to happen with Penta? Is he going to sit on the shelf and wait for, Rey Fenix? Is he going to take independent dates? Who knows? I mean, the whole situation was that Penta and Phoenix were going to leave and go over to WWE. Well, Tony Khan shut that down for right now, or not having Penta and Phoenix go over to AEW. I just think it's petty, man. I think it's really petty. I think it's being selfish to the fans, not seeing these talents on television, whether it be Rey Fenix and Penta or Ricky Starks. I think it's just being selfish. And my thing is, if in fact this is a situation that pertains to CM Punk, then, bro, with all due respect, you got to get over it, man. I understand that you were a super fan of CM Punk and what he's done in professional wrestling, but if you're hanging on to that hate for so long, where it's almost detrimental to your actual wrestling company, because there's more to wrestling than just CM Punk, and you're taking it out on talent that you have there on the roster currently that have been day one talents like Penta and Phoenix, it's bullshit, man. I really do. I think it's bullshit, to be honest with you. And I think it's going to slow this company. It's a slow burn, bro. But this company is continuing to keep burning in a bad way. Where if they don't change their ways, man, this company's not going to last, I don't think, the full 5 years. I mean, Time Warner and Warner Media can pull the plug any single time they want to and cancel AEW. Just because they got that TV deal don't mean they can't cancel AEW. And to be honest with you, I think AEW and Tony Khan need a reality check to realize what they're doing. The shit's not working. It's just not. They don't. Tony Khan and AEW, they don't give a shit anymore about the fans, man. I don't know who's giving him insight on creative, but whoever that person is needs to be fired. I'm sorry. They need to lose their job. Because either they're self-sabotaging their own, or that person's sabotaging AEW, or Tony Khan and that person are self-sabotaging their own company and don't give a shit, and all they care about is the money. That's it. And to be honest with you, yeah, okay, I can understand they got the TV deal, which I understand that. But how much profit are you making as of late? Whether it be ticket sales, whether it be merchandise, pay-per-view buys, how much revenue are you actually making as of late since you signed this new TV deal? Not counting the TV deal, how much revenue are you actually making with ticket sales and pay-per-view buys as of late? To be honest with you, compared to what it was 2 years ago. Seriously, and I think that's a good question to ask. I would love to ask Tony Khan that question. What revenue had you made and since you signed this new TV deal with Time Warner and Warner Media, when it pertains to ticket sales and pay-per-view buys? How much revenue are you making this year compared to what you were making last year or the year before that? Because it's got to be night and day, bro. It's got to be vastly different from what he was making last year or 2 years ago to compare to about right now. AEW in 2024, 2024 has been the worst year for AEW in the company's existence for the past 5 years. The first 2-3 years of AEW, red hot. Red hot. They couldn't miss, bro. That with the storylines, the matches, Sting's retirement match, bringing in, new talent, Mercedes. Everybody was hyped up over Mercedes coming in. All this other shit. Okada, Will Ospreay, and they shit the bed, man. I mean, honestly. And prime example for this, Okada is a household name over in Japan. He should be shown on television a lot more than what he has been. And him teaming up with Matt and Nick Jackson, I believe, is only hurting Okada. If I'm being brutally honest. Okada needs to be that guy who is the ultimate babyface of AEW to try to save AEW. Because at this point, you have to ask yourself this question. Who is going to be the one person, ultimately, that's going to save AEW from this Jon Moxley storyline? Is it really going to be Darby? Darby just got his ass kicked against Brody King in the Continental Classic tournament. And before that, Claudio Castagnoli beat the shit out of Darby Allin. Do you really have a lot of faith in Darby being the guy that's going to save AEW? And I will go back to what I originally said when they had Wrestle Dream, where it should have been Bryan Danielson versus Darby Allin. And here's the other news flash to a lot of people that probably don't understand this. Bryan Danielson is not fully retired from pro wrestling. He's retired from a full-time in-ring schedule. He's still available to work part-time dates. So again, where's Bryan Danielson? Is Danielson going to come back? Reunite the troops? Is he going to be the guy to once again take on Jon Moxley and return to, AEW to what it once was? Is that what they're building towards? Because if that's the case, let's get the ball rolling. Hell, let's get that ball hauling ass at this point. Because at this point, the storyline with Jon Moxley, it's going nowhere. No one's giving a shit about Jon Moxley. No one's caring about this whole Death Rider situation. It's a dead issue, man. No one gives a shit about this. Honestly, we don't. And what you see is what you get. And I'm sorry, with all due respect to this year's Continental Classic tournament, to the first year they had it, it's night and day. First year was great. This year, I'm not really hyped up around it, to be honest with you. And you're going to do you need to do a whole hell of a lot more to save AEW than have the Continental Classic tournament. I'm sorry. That's not going to save AEW, bro. It's not. And honestly, some of the names are the same names we got last year. We got Brody King in it this year. We also got Mark Briscoe in it. They were in it last year, or the first tournament. Let's get some new names in this tournament, man. We don't need to have repeat names in this tournament. This roster's already bloated as it is. To be honest. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where AEW need to, and I'm not the only one that has said this shit. AEW needs to go back to what brought them to the goddamn dance. To be honest with you. And some people even back in the day were like, oh, it's a glorified indie show, and they got a TV deal. That's all it is. Okay, but it fucking worked. It worked. AEW, when it first got on, AEW came into fruition, and they got the TV deal. They had the best tag team division in the world. Right now, the tag division is shit. They were putting on banger matches with story. Why can't we go back to that? Seriously, why? If you want matches just to have matches and no storyline, watch the indies. This is not the indies, bro. This is weekly episodic television. They're on cable TV week in and week out. Whether it's on Dynamite or whether it's on Collision, TNT and TBS, every single goddamn week. You need to build storylines, man. I have told you guys this multiple times in the past about AEW, that this is not all Japan Pro Wrestling. Where it was all tournament-based, and the best versus the best, Kawada, Misawa, Vader. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same shit. It's not. Maybe the fan base over in Japan, they don't like the storylines. Maybe they just want the best versus the best. And by all means, God bless. Some of the greatest wrestlers of all time have come over from Japan. Absolutely. One of my greatest wrestlers of all time is the Great Muta. The Orient. Absolutely. When he was being managed by Gary Hart, absolutely. Great Muta is one of the all-time greatest legends of all time, and he's worked a lot of matches, obviously, in Japan. You know what I mean? You look at Misawa. He was the face of All Japan Pro Wrestling at one point. The biggest baby face of the company. And then created Pro Wrestling Noah. Kawada. Again, Kawada and Misawa were one of the two biggest rivals in that company. All Japan was great, and it worked back then. It worked in the 80s, and it worked a little bit in the 90s. It's not the same thing now. We need captivating storylines to get the fans invested. Prime example, you look at the Bloodline situation. I mentioned this multiple goddamn times, and I'm going to keep saying it and saying it and saying it. It's the best storyline right now in all professional wrestling. It's like a fine wine, man. It gets better with age. They got the War Games coming up. Survivor Series. The original Bloodline versus Solo Sikoa's Bloodline. Everybody was looking, who's going to be the fifth member? Now you bring in someone like CM Punk. Why? Because the wise man, Paul Heyman, also worked with CM Punk, and he also worked with Roman Reigns. So Paul Heyman made the call. There's levels to this shit, man, and they're slowly building other, angles leading up to different PLEs. Why can't AEW do the same shit? Why? It's not hard. It's really not that hard, man. And if you do that, I promise you, you will sell tickets. You will put asses in seats to watch this event, or watch these, PLEs, because fans are going to be captivated to watch your weekly episodic television. And two, you're gonna make more of a profit if you do this, because more people are going to go to the events, go to Dynamite, go to Collision, go to the pay-per-views, sell more merch. I mean, it's not rocket science, man. It's not. It's not hard to comprehend. Tony Khan and AEW refused to do that. Because Tony Khan wants it his way, and obviously, to be honest with you, his way's not working. It's not. The ratings are in the goddamn toilet. They can't fill arenas. That's why they had to move different pay-per-views to different smaller arenas. They're going to do smaller events and venues going into 2025, which I think is a great freaking idea. But they can't even sell out arenas. They're selling 1,500 to 2,300 tickets at these Dynamite events, and that's being generous. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like, you need to go back to what brought you to the dance and realize what you're doing right now for this company is crippling this company more than it's actually helping this company. And hopefully, going into 2025, because something has to change, hopefully 2025 will be a better year for AEW. You know, hopefully it'll work out for him. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classy.